Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Livonia Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum featuring the candidates running this fall for Livonia City Council. My name is Dan West. I'm the president of the Livonia Chamber of Commerce and I'll be the moderator for this evening's program. This forum is designed to be an informational program to give Livonia's business community and residents a chance to learn more about the candidates running for Livonia City Council in the election taking place Tuesday, November 7th. The Livonia Chamber of Commerce is a nonpartisan, non-profit trade organization that represents some 930 businesses and organizations. The Chamber does not make any candidate endorsements. We thank everyone in the audience for joining us this evening and the candidates for their participation. And a special thank you to the team at Livonia City Television for recording this forum so others can watch it and rebroadcast in the weeks ahead on Channel 8. In this program, we will hold a 90-minute forum for the 8 candidates competing for 4 seats on the Livonia City Council. The Chamber's Government Affairs Committee established the format and the initial questions for the forum. In accordance with Chamber policies, we only invited the candidates whose names appear on the ballot this fall. Members of the audience are invited to ask questions. Many of them have already submitted some questions on 3x5 cards that will be handed out and available. Please hand them to Tom Stroup, who will collect them for us, and we will sort them out throughout the course of the evening. We will screen them to prevent questions that are redundant, inaccurate, or personal. We will ask as many questions from the audience that we can in the time allotted. And now, it is time to introduce the 8 candidates running for 4 seats on the Livonia City Council. In alphabetical order, they are James Hooper, Susan Heisen, Jim Jolly, Steve King, Brian Meekin, Gerald Perez, Laura Toy, and Kathy White. Please welcome our candidates. The top 3 finishers will earn a 4-year term on the council, and the 4th place finisher will earn a 2-year term on the council. A council member holds a part-time position on the city's 7-member legislative body. The top overall vote getter will also earn the position of city council president and mayor pro tem for the next 2 years. This forum will take approximately 90 minutes long. Each candidate will be invited to make a 1-minute opening statement, a 90-second closing statement, and up to 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidates are arranged in order of numbers that were drawn prior to this forum. Accordingly, we will rotate in the order of each candidate response first. Audience, please silence or turn off your cell phones during the forum to minimize interruptions. Laura Tamuch and Dawn Topa from the Chamber staff are on the front row, and they will serve as our timekeeper and inform the candidates of how much time they have left. With that, we will begin our forum with Mr. Gerald Perez, who will present his opening statement. Mr. Perez.
I want to thank the Livonia Chamber of Commerce for inviting me here. My name is Gerald Perez, and I have been a Livonia resident for 34 years. I am currently working with my wife, Polly, in our daycare. Aunt Polly's Playhouse, she opened it up in 1994. I joined her after I retired from AT&T in 1998. I have nearly 30 years of corporate business experience with AT&T. 24 of those years were in management as a supervisor, and 6 of the 24 years were as the administrator of employee activities and the community service organization. I am a former board member of the United Foundations and the Friends of the Rouge. I am currently working as a Livonia Police Reserve Officer and have since 1994. And I am also working part-time at Madonna University. I have been involved with many programs in the city of Livonia, such as the Livonia Junior Football League, the baseball leagues, the Livonia Hockey Association, as a coach and a manager. I believe these and my other experiences will help me qualify to become one of your city council members. Thank you.
Opening comment for Brian Meekin.
Hello, my name is Brian Meekin. I've had the privilege of serving on City Council for 12 years. It doesn't seem that long ago that I was the new guy here. But 14 years later, I'm a senior member of council. Boy, time sure does fly. Does this mean I have unlimited time? We've had a lot of changes in Livonia in the last 2 years. A new mayor, clerk, and treasurer, and we've done pretty well. Ford Motor Company has invested $1 billion in Livonia. Masco has opened up, and everyone is really excited about Amazon coming. Good things are happening in our city. However, we can't rest on our laurels. We're competing with Heartland, Howell, Plymouth, and Northville. We've got to give people a reason for moving their businesses here and for young families to come. So why not Livonia? We've got the location, the services, and the citizens to compete with anybody. I believe we have a team to move forward in Livonia, and I'd ask for your support on November 7th. Make it Meekin. Thank you.
Opening statement for Kathy White.
Good evening. My name is Kathy White, and I'm running for re-election to the Livonia City Council. I was first elected in 2015, and prior to that, I served many years as the Chief Assistant City Attorney for the City of Livonia. Prior to ever getting elected, I had over 3 decades, I almost said 30, oh my gosh, 3 decades of experience in municipal government. I believe I work well with my current colleagues on the City Council. While we don't always see things the same way, which is part of the democratic process, we all respect one another, and I think we are able to make good decisions for the city, and we're all there because we have a passion for the city. Based upon my legal background, I try hard to look at both sides of an issue before making a decision. I'm someone who does her homework prior to voting on a matter. I serve as chair of the Legislative Committee and vice chair of the Finance, Budget, and Technology Committee. I'd ask that I'm glad that you're attending so that you can get to know me a little better. Thank you.
Opening comment for Laura Toy.
Thank you very much, Dan. I want to thank your director, Dan West, and the chamber staff for inviting us tonight. I'm a lifelong Livonia resident whose father was number 6 on the Livonia Police Department. I also own and operate a small business, Cardwell Florist, on Plymouth Road for the last 4 decades. My interest in public service goes back to my days in college when I was a student at the University of Michigan, when I interned then for Edward H. McNamara. I conducted a bike study and also helped start the city's first recycling center. From there, I went on to serve the city council and as city treasurer and as a state legislator in both chambers, the House and the Senate. I am running for city council in this election because I have a passion for our city. I want to continue using the knowledge and abilities that I have gained through my life experiences to serve our residents. If elected, I will work to protect everyone. Thank you.
Opening comment for Susan Heisen.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Susan Heisen, and I'm running for Livonia City Council. I am a graduate of the University of Michigan. I got my master's degree from Eastern Michigan University and my law degree from Wayne State. I'm an attorney who works as a regulatory affairs consultant for an insurance company. What that means is I look at complex state and federal regulations and ensure that we comply. When I worked at the University of Michigan's Institute for Continuing Legal Education, I was a research attorney who worked on the first reference book for state attorneys in Michigan on zoning laws. So I have familiarity with a plethora of regulations and how they impact communities and businesses. What I'd like to do is bring my work experience and my volunteer experience, where I've worked in the Livonia Public Schools, in the classrooms, in the PTA, including acting as PTA president, to help create a more vibrant community for Livonia's citizens and its businesses. Thank you.
Okay. Opening statement for James Hooper.
I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks for the chamber putting this on and for all of the candidates who are here this evening presenting for you, the voters. My name is James Hooper, and I'm running for city council. My wife, Kimberly, and I are proud residents of Livonia. I serve on our church as a chairperson of missions and outreach. I'm also a member of the church finance team and of the leadership council of the church. Kim grew up in Livonia. I did not. I grew up in the city of Detroit, and I've moved around to several cities within southeastern Michigan. My professional background is that of a tradesman, but I've also worked in project management with Samaritan's Purse in Liberia, West Africa. Currently, I am serving as a personal caregiver for my mother, who lives with my wife and I, and she is suffering from Alzheimer's related dementia. After returning from the mission field, my time is up. You'll have to look at my Facebook page.
Opening statement for Mr. King, Steve King.
Thank you, Dan. My name is Steve King. I've lived in Livonia longer than any currently serving elected official since 1956. I know its history and its needs. I bring to council a wealth of experience as a business owner, and I have many innovative ideas. As a council member, I will not have to be brought up to speed on how to work with my colleagues. I realize would be only one council member, and you have to collaborate to achieve outcomes, something that I can do. I have proven myself as an elected official to be a good listener and someone that responds to citizen inquiries. The council is the legislative body of the city. It establishes ordinances, plays a large role in planning and zoning, and very importantly, reviews and approves the budget. I am a budget hawk, and I have proved that when I was on the school board. And also, I can read blueprints and technical drawings, something that council members from the past have admitted. Sometimes the people that come before, it's a little over their head. And more importantly, I know what questions to ask when blueprints and technical drawings. Thank you very much.
And finally, the opening statement for Jim Jolly.
Good evening. My name is Jim Jolly. I currently serve on the Livonia City Council, where I am the chair of the Public Safety, Recreation, and Education Committee. I have worked hard the last 2 years to be fully engaged in the work of council and also the work of our community. I am a husband, a father, and an attorney here in the city of Livonia. I have a history of serving the city of Livonia well, first as a court officer at the district court, and then as a magistrate at the district court. Through those positions, I have a history of respecting our residents and doing my best to serve Livonia and make Livonia a better city. I think that this is an exciting time for the city of Livonia because we have really an opportunity to forge the way forward for the future. We are completing, well, first starting, then completing our first comprehensive master plan since 1985. That, along with new innovative programs like the Neighborhood Seed Grant that I started along with the help of my colleagues on council, are new ways to reach out to residents, to engage our families, and to make Livonia a more attractive place. Thank you very much.
You can tell when they get the stop card. All right, the first question, we'll start with Mr. Meekin with this one. And that first question is, what is the most important issue facing Livonia, and how would you address this? Mr. Meekin.
Well, the most important issue facing Livonia is we're an aging community and we need to get younger. For us to survive, we have to have a turnover for new families. And how we do that is very complicated because our seniors are very important to us and we have to take care of them. In the past few years on council, we've approved 3 to 4 senior housing projects that are going to be extremely exciting for those people to move into. But it's important that they have to be secure, safe, provide food for them because they can't go anyplace else to get their food, so they have to be taken care of. That's our highest priority is our seniors. So if we get the seniors to move into some of these other facilities, it opens up the housing market for younger families to move in. We have a high inventory of affordable housing in Livonia, second to none in this area. Nobody has housing like Livonia does. In the real estate market today, if you're looking in Livonia, it's on the market for 2 to 3 days and it's gone. So you have to be quick and buy a house as soon as you can.
Ms. White?
You also have to be quick and answer the question as soon as you can, right? I have 2 things that I think are priorities right now. Number 1, I'm concerned about the number of vacant commercial properties in the city, particularly along Plymouth Road. And number 2, I think we need to work very hard in keeping our public safety as strong of a department as it has been. We're having trouble attracting applicants. I don't know whether it's because it's not a real popular position anymore for the public or the fact that some applicants are going to other communities. But we need to make sure that we keep a strong priority on keeping our department having the resources that it needs to be successful. As far as the vacant buildings in the city of Livonia, I plan to continue to work with our economic development staff and out in the community talking to business leaders to make sure that they know that we always have an open door for them. We're looking for them to expand within our city and hopefully through their contacts encourage other businesses to come in and fill those vacant spaces. Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you. I'm glad I sat next to Kathy because I had both of those as my top priorities. The strip centers are somewhat unsightly in our community. I know that we have developed some of them, and I know our mayor and our council are trying to address those needs. But I really think we need to identify who we are and where we're going to be. And there's been many studies done over the years. Those of us that go back a while and some up here may remember some of those, beyond the year of 2020, beyond the year of whatever. I mean, there have been numerous studies done by the city and predictions of what may happen. And I think that Jim cited that there was supposed to be a rail system at one point going down because of the metropolitan centers that would be. But our public safety, too, is really at jeopardy. And being a small retailer, you see that, the safety issue that we are facing with not only police, but our fire department as well. Thank you.
Ms. Heisen?
Thank you. I think the biggest issue is creating a place where people want to live and businesses want to come to. And as my colleagues on this panel have said, we have to focus on the development that we already have and how to renovate that. And that includes looking at things like creating more green spaces, creating mixed-use developments, and then also looking at sustainability and environmental impacts, because those are things that forward-thinking companies and forward-thinking people look to for their cities that they want to live in. One of the issues I want to address is trying to create a city-free Wi-Fi. And what that would mean, it would help engage our current citizens, it would bring people here, it would bring businesses here, and it would establish us as a city that looks to the future and understands that technology is going to change, but we want to embrace that and we want to move forward with that. Demographics change, our needs change, but we can work with that. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper?
Thank you. The two issues that I see as primary issues for the city of Livonia, number one is making it attractional for new families and young families to come here to Livonia. As Brian Meekin said, we do have an aging population, and that population needs to transition out of single-family homes into a more adequate senior living atmosphere, and so that we can attract new families here. But part of that, too, is also we need to get creative with the strip malls that we have. We have an opportunity now, especially in 7 and Farmington, where that property can transition. We have that opportunity to make that happen and go from a 1.0 strip mall to something that is very attractional for new folks to come here, millennials especially. The second issue that I believe is of very good importance is infrastructure, and I will get into that more later. Thank you.
Mr. King?
I think there's a lot of issues, but for me personally, the issue is my children, they don't want to live in Livonia. They grew up in Livonia, they went through Livonia Public Schools, and they and all their friends have moved out of Livonia. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, mostly because our city has a reputation for not being kind of a hip city where people want to be, Plymouth, Northville, Farmington, those kinds of things. I think a big issue, though, is our legacy cost. We have legacy costs related to benefits and health care, especially for first responders, employee health care, going up 5% every year. That is something that we really need to get a handle on, because this is what all cities are facing. Legacy costs are challenging city budgets across this country. So I have a lot of innovative ideas for that.
Mr. Jolly?
I think Livonia is a great community. It's full of great opportunities. We have a phenomenal public safety system. We have phenomenal public schools. We are cost-effective and utilize tax dollars well. It's not about bringing in young families or taking care of the elderly. It's about making this a community where all people can be engaged and work together. I don't want to segment society or focus on different areas and different age groups. We need to work together to partner with individuals, neighborhoods, the businesses, to bring Livonia together to be a more walkable community, to address things like empty retail spaces, which all cities are going to be engaged in that, because retail is changing, the landscape is changing. So we're obviously going to have some opportunities to address neighborhood strip malls to maybe be something greater in the future that will be more readily utilized and valued. We can do that through zoning and, comprehensive master planning to plan Livonia for the future. Thanks.
And Mr. Perez?
Dan, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, what is the most important issue facing Livonia, and how would you address this?
I agree with a lot of the issues that everybody has brought up. One of the things that I would like to take a look at is reducing the carbon footprint of Livonia. And one of the things that I was looking at is working at Madonna's that they got a solar panel project set up. And you take a look at Newburgh Road, and they got solar panels all over the place over there. So what I'm thinking is, well, you could set up the solar panel projects, take a look at all the spaces that we have, all the rooftops that we have, City Hall, libraries, fire stations, police stations, the senior housing centers, all these spaces that we have out there, you could put solar panels. The other thing I'd like to take a look at is taking all the city vehicles and making them hybrid vehicles. Imagine how that can reduce our carbon footprint, whether you talk about school buses, community transit, the whole transportation that we have in Livonia. I think that'll help us out. Apparently, according to the mayor, going to LED lighting saved us, or is going to save us $282,000. So if we can do that, we can do more with solar panels.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. This one will begin with Ms. White. And that question is, what is your greatest accomplishment in serving the Livonia community, and why does that stand out to you? What is your greatest accomplishment in serving the Livonia community, and why does that stand out to you? Ms. White.
I think what jumps to mind immediately is the work I've done with my church. I've been involved in their mission endeavors. We have gone to the Jersey Shore to rebuild homes after Hurricane Sandy. Right now, I'm involved at Grant School. I help teach multiplication to the third graders at Grant, which I love, and I also love the fact that the answer's on the back of my index cards when I'm interacting with them. I also am very active with the Friends of the Wilson Barn. I have served on many, many boards for the city, including the Board of Review, the Election Commission, and various other city responsible positions. So I think in combination of the community work I've done with my church and the dedication I've given to the city over the years, I think those two jump out. Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you. There's been so many when residents call you and have needs, and sometimes it's 10:30 at night, sometimes it's early in the morning. But I really enjoy the reading to the youth. In fact, one of my people in Lansing, who is still very active to this day, I read to him when he was in the third grade, and he followed my career through politics and himself became involved in politics. I'm also proud of the Environmental Center I started back under Edward H. McNamara, where we collected bottles and we recycled glass to Libby Owens, and we buried the combustible engine over at Knee Hazel Park. I've always asked them to try and dig that up, but anyhow. And also the internship. I did serve with Ed McNamara, which I learned a lot of things from him. Both serving on the Youth and the Ecology Commission were highlights of some of my careers as I reflect back on my career here in Livonia.
Ms. Heisen?
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the reason we moved to Livonia, which was to find a good community to raise our daughter. And part of that was we had her in Garfield Cooperative Preschool, which was a 90-family cooperative community preschool, and I was the president, and in that time, the teacher left. So we were a school without a teacher, and 90 families were trying to figure out how to keep their children engaged in a community environment that meant a lot to them. So I initiated a hiring process. We found candidates, and we were able to hire someone within a very short amount of time and keep the co-op going, and it's still going to this day. My daughter is now 20 years old. She was 3 when that happened. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also happy more recently with the pro bono work I've been able to do with disadvantaged youth in Livonia. I'm not going to go into the representation that I do for them, but it's happy for me that I can give back that way. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper?
I'll have to admit, my wife and I, although she has been a longtime resident of Livonia, again, I've moved around the southeast Michigan, and coming back from the mission field, this is where we chose to make a home. So if you're going to ask me what I specifically did in Livonia, I probably don't have an adequate answer for you that would satisfy, most people. If you want to know what's the most proud thing that I've done, I would have to say my work in Liberia, West Africa, working with Samaritan's Purse. I was able to work with a great team, but of nationals there, and others that came in on teams to rebuild a Bible college that was destroyed in their civil war. And then also my time working with refugees from Ivory Coast who had come there because Ivory Coast was experiencing a war-torn atmosphere.
All right, Mr. King?
Thank you. I've been here a long time, so I've got a lot to be proud of. The opportunities I provided for kids to play as sports director at the Y. I retooled programs. If you don't make your team when you try out for the high school, there's nowhere for you to play. So that didn't sit well with me. I created a high school basketball program, which is still around today and still active at the Y. The teaching I've done, I am the only teacher in this community that has taught in every single building. I've been a guest teacher in every single building, the Career Center, every one of them. The building that I have done in my neighborhood, I have done extreme makeovers on 4 homes that today are worth over $2 million. That is my blood, sweat, and tears that went into that to help boost my entire neighborhood. It was a catalyst for the entire neighborhood for other neighbors to fix up their properties. So yes, there's a lot I'm proud of. My service on the school board, stop.
Mr. Jolly?
Thank you. I think over the course of the 10 years that I've served Livonia, I've had a fair amount to be proud of, and most of that derives from the fact that I've treated each individual as a person and a unique set of circumstances that deserves attention and detail. More recently, though, I'm most proud of the Neighborhood Seed Grant program that we recently started in the city of Livonia. This is a program that funded 20 projects here in 2017 for citizen-led events, projects, improvements, to really engage the neighborhoods and engage the people in the city of Livonia and show them what could be possible. It's been a success to the point where the budget funding and the proposed budget will increase that amount, so we will be able to fund 25 projects next year. I think we need to do more proactive things like this to make Livonia the place that we all talk about up here. And I think I will work to do that.
All right, Mr. Perez?
I have a few that come to mind. The most important thing is working with my wife in the daycare. It was very fascinating to see the children, watch them grow from the time that they were like, our youngest one was about 3 weeks old, and we took them all the way up to like they were 5 years old. So we had 87 children that went through the daycare. We're retiring this year. So when I multiplied that out, there was about 600-something people that we affected in just doing the daycare. But it was very interesting watching them grow, teaching them their ABCs, shuttling them to the Jackson Center. And the other thing is working with the Livonia Police Department and getting out there into the community, talking with people, meeting them at all the special events, and just enjoying the conversations with them and what was important to them.
And Mr. Meekin?
Thank you, Dan. I've had a huge impact on the city of Livonia. I'm extremely proud of my service on the city council. I've focused a lot of time on economic development. Even before Mayor Wright's rapid response team, I served on Mayor Kirksey's rapid response team. We've done a lot of developments here in the last 15 years that are extremely important. Wonderland Mall was vacant. Now look at it. It's a beautiful shopping facility. Livonia Mall is another example. Well, we got work to do there because I imagine Sears is going to be in the same situation in a few years. Does anybody remember the Chevy Spring and Bumper plant from the old days? Mm-hmm. That's going to be Amazon in the next couple weeks. This is all part of the economic development team that we have in force here in the city of Livonia, and I'm extremely proud of that. And I look forward to continuing to look to 7 Mile in Farmington. We have an opportunity there. That's 13 acres that we have a chance to redevelop in our community. Thank you.
All right, now the next question, we'll start off with Ms. Toy, and that question is, does the city need to invest in modernizing city facilities and infrastructure in Livonia? If so, how do we pay for it? Again, does the city need to invest in modernizing its facilities and infrastructure here in Livonia? And if so, how do we pay for it? Ms. Toy.
Well, that's always a challenge. Money doesn't solve all problems, as I've spoken about that before. It takes a lot of human ingenuity. And if I were to answer that question, I would pull the department heads together and the people that work here every day that have to turn on their heaters when some of those doors open in City Hall. If you've ever worked in it, you know how cold they can get in the winter. I've often said we should have put a driveway right out front. because that's where it was meant to enter City Hall. I really believe that people are the answer to any solution. You have to listen to what they're saying. Walmart learned that years ago, to treat your customers right, to listen to your customers, because they know best. So I'm familiar with the legislative process. I've served on the appropriations in the state, but they're not so quick to give money out readily unless you really prove yourself. So I think the people are the best answer in City Hall.
Okay. Ms. Heisen?
Well, if there's a need for extra money, I think then we need to find out where that money can come from. I know there's a fund that's a surplus fund that we have available. If it's a bigger issue, we can look to creating a millage vote and seeing if the people want to raise money that way. But ultimately, as Laura was saying, people will come to us and say, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be remedied. This is an issue that's been plaguing our community, our neighborhood, our building, and we need you to help us fix it. So as a member of the city council, I'm going to look at all the options, not say no, not say, oh, of course, and here's how we're going to do it, but figure out a way if maybe there can be a public-private partnership to resolve an issue. And I'm not sure why I'm making this
Yeah,
noise.
we'll get that. Hopefully they'll address that back there.
Okay,
So we apologize for that.
And so again, if we need the extra money, we can find the money somehow. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper?
As I had mentioned in my opening statement, I believe infrastructure is a critical issue that needs to be addressed here in the city. Our roads, sewers, and water lines, they have to be continued to be maintained. And I'm going to give you a little bit of analogy. I like analogies. And it's an analogy of a car. So if I have a nice car and, I go out there and I wax it and I make it look really pretty and that, and it's got nice rims on it and I'm driving, that's great. But if I don't change the oil and I don't make sure that the brakes are maintained and the engine, what's going to happen? That car is going to break down. It's going to break down at the most inopportune time when I'm trying to drive down the freeway somewhere important. We have to do that. I know infrastructure, it doesn't sound like a sexy issue. It's not like, well, we're going to have new buildings somewhere or something like that, but it is absolutely necessary that that happens. Thank you.
Mr. King?
Yeah, I think that question is actually talking about, I'm hearing rumblings about we want to build a new city hall, which I do not support in any way, shape, or form. I do not support that until we have a central gathering place, some kind of Livonia Town Square that serves the people of this community. Now, I know this building's a wreck. It's been leaking since the day it was built. It's a flat roof. I believe it was poorly designed. It wasn't tied into the old structure well at all. It's terrible. If you've ever walked into the old structure to the new, so I don't appreciate that. We have aging infrastructure, but even worse, we have aging thought, aging ideas of how we deal with our infrastructure. 7 Mile Road between Merriman and Farmington is the greatest road ever built in Livonia. It is beautiful. It has great material. Whoever built that section of road should build all of the roads in Livonia. We put tar over our roads. It buckles up, becomes a speed bump everywhere you go.
Mr. Jolly?
Thank you. So the city of Livonia has a long history of planning appropriately to take on big projects, such as a potential new city hall. I would say anything having to do with that would have to start with public meetings where we'd get input from the residents and the people involved. Obviously, we're going to have an opportunity to address these things in the comprehensive master plan that will address this entire campus and how we utilize space and land throughout the community. When we talk about infrastructure and roads, most residents don't realize that the vast majority of roads that are poorly maintained in the city of Livonia, Michigan, are county roads. They're state roads. The roads that are maintained by the city of Livonia are maintained very well. We do a good job of finding the funding appropriately and taking on projects as we can complete them and fix them. We have a dedicated millage for roads in the city of Livonia that we use effectively and well. But of course, we can always do better, and we always strive to do better. Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
Well, I believe that the city's master plan will address a lot of these items. I think that will actually get us to be more proactive rather than reactive. How are we going to pay for these things? From what I understand, from some of my research in that, I did not know this at the time, but I believe that there's oil under Livonia, and royalties paid from this oil from West Bay Exploration is approximately $450,000 to date. And we also have cell towers out there, and they generate to date $396,403. And then we have the information that just going to LED lighting saves like $282,000. Do you think we could take some of that money and help do some of these things for the city of Livonia? I think so. Thank you.
Mr. Meekin?
Thank you, Dan. Infrastructure is very important to our city and our campus here in Livonia. About 7 years ago, we rebuilt the courthouse. I happen to be the senior administrator for that project, and we bonded that building. It worked out very well. Currently, we're looking at the DPW yard, where we did a master plan of that campus, and the initial cost was going to be about $17 million. So last year, we purchased a building on Farmington Road, which will give us access to the facility right from Farmington. Most people don't know where our DPW yard is, and if they do, they have a hard time getting to it. So we are constantly working with our infrastructure to improve the services for our residents. We do have bonding capacity. In fact, we had our budget meeting this past week. We have umpteen millions available to us if we wanted to bond it. But the problem is, if we're going to bond it, we have to make payments on it. And what services are we going to give up if we want to make those kind of bond payments? Thank you.
And Ms. White?
Thank you. We have a history of keeping up with modernization of city facilities. This year alone, Brian mentioned our DPW building. We're also, we've approved funding for improvements to Fire Station 1. You all, those of you with small children, or even those who like to swim, can see the improvements we've done to Clement Circle Pool, and we plan to do more of that. I think it's a matter of looking at our capital improvement fund and carefully budgeting for those kind of items as we move into the future. I don't think it means that we have to look for outside sources other than our existing revenues, but we have to properly plan for those kind of improvements. I'd also like to see us improve our IT capabilities so that residents can interact and do city business more from their home with computer technologies. And finally, under the ground, our storm sewers and sanitary sewers, we need to keep investing in those so that we can avoid situations of flooded basements. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next question right now. We'll start this one with Ms. Heisen. And the question is, this is from the audience, are you in favor of developing medical marijuana dispensaries in the city? Why or why not? Are you in favor of developing medical marijuana dispensaries in the city? Why or why not? Ms. Heisen?
I'm not, simply because the issue has not been resolved. The legislature says one thing, federal law says another thing, and what ends up happening is these dispensaries get built and then they're raided and shut down. And I don't think that that's a good use of our resources, of land resources, of our police resources, of our city's attorney resources, and I think it's still just too far up in the air. Once the issue's decided, then we can return back to that, but until that point, I don't think we can move forward on that. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper?
Thank you. This is a bit of a complicated issue for a lot of reasons. What Susan mentioned is a very big part of that. It is not resolved on a federal level, and it's not resolved on a state level adequately. There's challenges going now back and forth. I think we'd be stepping into a mess to try and do that. I believe that the issue has to be resolved first on a federal level and then a state level. Thank you.
Mr. King?
This is about people suffering. Medicinal marijuana is legal. It passed in all 83 Michigan counties, all Livonia precincts, and all absentee ballots. It passed overwhelmingly. The people said, we want this. So who are the elected officials up here to usurp the power of the people? I know people that use it for cancer, for MS. I know a lot of people using medicinal marijuana. They cannot get it in Livonia. That is wrong. Susan, it's a states' rights issue. The states have to take the lead if the feds don't do their job. We saw that with civil rights. We saw that with Brown versus the Board of Education. It is time, every 49 seconds, someone is arrested for marijuana. $40,000 to incarcerate people annually for marijuana. Crazy. We need to move forward in this city.
Mr. Jolly?
So the federal government has spoken on this, and as far as they're concerned, it is settled law. The state of Michigan has a, voter-initiated law that has been, made available, which makes medical marijuana available to people who have a medical card. Here in the city of Livonia, listen, I don't think it's settled on the state level. The state legislature themselves don't know what they're doing with this in the long run, clearing up the law. But I can speak as somebody who's currently on city council. When this issue has come before us before, it's not that we haven't given that particular individual a fair shake to listen to their potential business. It's the fact that they brought us a proposal with no particular location in mind, no specifics, no details. It was just, hey, would you broadly approve of this? Well, that's not the way city business works, and that's not the way a good government works either. So I would say, listen, as far as the law goes, we follow the law in the city of Livonia, and we will do the best to do so. Thanks.
Mr. Perez?
For or against medical marijuana, it's quite a loaded question. I believe for medical purposes, I think it would be okay. Do I believe that it will be abused? Yes. I can see it being such a problem for the police department. I'm sure as we go forward, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to handle that. I mean, we talk about the opioid problem that we're having right now. How are we going to solve this problem? This is like maybe a stepping stone to something else. I just don't, it's like a Pandora's box, and it'll be quite hard to contain once it's opened. Thank you.
Mr. Meekin?
Well, it doesn't matter whether this is a federal issue or a state issue. I'm opposed to dispensaries in the city of Livonia. However, that doesn't mean that's the only issue. There's facilities that are grow facilities. Some could use our industrial area where there's not the traffic. That I could at least entertain, but at this point, I'm not interested in dispensaries in the city of Livonia.
Okay. Ms. White?
I also share Mr. Meekin's view. I don't think that medical marijuana dispensaries are a good idea for the city of Livonia and our family-friendly image. I am very sympathetic to those who have legitimate medical issues where this is a savior for those types of problems. But I do question how closely we have vetted, we being the state of Michigan, those requesting medical marijuana cards. Our police chief objects because it does cause a drain on public safety. And I think in the future, this is going to be big business. There's people out there ready, willing, and able to make a quick profit, and I don't think they should do that at the expense of our residents. Thank you.
And Ms. Toy?
Thank you. The word medical comes to mind, and when things are medical, they usually go through a prescription, usually go through a drugstore or a druggist that has training in those kinds of drugs. So therefore, I've always said, even in the legislature, we should be putting this not in these little dispensaries, but in our local drugstores. We should also consider the fact that it is not legal, whether it's federal or state. And as been said, they grapple with this issue on a yearly basis, sometimes too much. But to the point, I am not for these kinds of things. I think it belongs with a professional person. And as far as the growing goes, there's a lot of questions on that. That is big business. That is big money. It's big money for any state that adopts it because of the popularity, as was alluded to. But in what I do, in my job, it can be a gateway drug to a lot of human trafficking issues as well. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. And, no, actually, I'm sorry, Ms. Heisen did answer the first one. Okay, so we'll go to Mr. Hooper now with this one. And this question is from the audience. What would you like to see developed at 7 Mile and Farmington, the site of the former Kmart store? Again, what would you like to see developed at the corner of 7 Mile and Farmington, the site of the former Kmart store?
Thank you for whoever presented the question. I've seen a lot of sketches and designs, concept designs for what could go on that property. Part of it is the issue is part of a larger question for Livonia and the community to decide. And that's whether we have a downtown or whether we have just development in areas such as 7 in Farmington that are at this point just dilapidated, not dilapidated, but they're just non-existent, they're not functional. I would like to see something that captures millennials there. I would like to see something that's striking there, that is attractional to families. I would like to see where they can come in, there's retail on the ground level, but then there's also lofts above, maybe, 2 or 3 bedroom lofts that can, go for, 100 or, like 200,000 or something like that. We have to be creative.
Mr. King?
Thank you. I know there's been talk about putting a Kroger in there, like one of the Kroger market stores where you do shopping, not of groceries, but clothes and stuff as well, which seems like that'd be a good spot, except Joe's, he just put a couple $1 million into his place, so what does that do to him? As a city, I think we have to decide what industries we want to have and then actively pursue them. I think we need to look at vertical farming, 3D manufacturing, bioengineering, and alternative energy companies. Oakland County created Automation Alley. They went after different biomedical and technicals. Right now, there's 4,500 tech manufacturing jobs created from that, hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of businesses, great educational opportunities. So again, we've got to move forward. Our thinking has to be not the same old, same old. Stop.
Mr. Jolly?
Thank you. So we as a city can push and we can plead with developers to bring quality plans before us. Personally, I know if it was up to the people who are currently on city council, we would see a lot of innovative things coming through the city. And the bottom line is we don't own the property, and we have to work with developers closely to get something that they're willing to pay for and develop, and something that we're going to utilize as a community. If it was up to me, I would love to see something like Mr. Hooper mentioned, that was maybe a 4 to 6 story building with living condominiums above, with balconies maybe, with some kind of retail on the first floor that was set back far enough that you could have a walkable area, and kind of give people that engaging environment that they would like to have here in the city of Livonia. People don't realize this. People say the historic downtown is Plymouth Road. One of our historic downtowns is really 7 in Farmington. If you look at the buildings that are around there and the uses of those buildings previously, including the original courthouse, that is a potential to kind of utilize it like that again. Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
I think what I would like to see there is probably something like condos, combination maybe parks, because you could be bringing in younger families. Plus, I think seniors might want to live in a condo also. But I think it would be an issue that the master plan will probably answer, but it will be something that will be decided by the community. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Meekin?
This is going to be a very difficult topic because the owners of the property right now deal in retail. They presented a Kroger. It was going to be a 100,000 square foot building, a great big Kroger's right there with a gas station. They say they want to be unique. And I told them, well, that sounds just like Walmart and the rest of them here. We don't need another Walmart in Livonia. So we have to work with them to come up with a better solution. I like the idea of putting condos in there. If you look in that neighborhood, it's basically a residential area, so it should be residential. But we also need to have mixed use in there. Put some offices in there, some restaurants in there. Give people the opportunity to walk to work if they wanted to. It's just going to take time, and it's not going to be done overnight. We need to work with the Shostak family and to come up with the best solution for the citizens of Livonia.
Ms. White?
Others have pointed out the difficulty with the fact that this is privately owned land. I, as a council member, would be in support of some kind of rezoning of that property to allow for a mixed-use development. I like the idea of lofts above retail or some kind of residential space above retail. Royal Oak is a good example of how that can be done successfully. In that location, somehow you need to add green space and walkability so that it isn't a sea of concrete like it is right now. I think a lot of our seniors that maybe want to stay in the city of Livonia would love to see more ranch-style condos or some kind of senior apartments, senior independent living apartments. So if we could convince a developer to head in that direction as a council, I think as one council member, I would support that for that location. Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you. Much has been said. If you recall, and you've lived here long enough, you remember part of that property was a horse stable at one point. I wouldn't activate going back to that. But in all seriousness, mixed use, lofts, we got to look at what's happening with retail. With wonderful companies like Amazon coming in, brick and mortar is going to have a lot of problems as we face the future. And where are entry-level jobs going to go? So we want to be careful of what we're doing. I'd like to see us bring in some of the arts, a pond where people can sit and gather. That's been talked about. Obviously, walkable communities are a great desire in all of our parts of our city and different niche groups. But 7 Mile and Farmington is a jewel, and I would hope, if elected, I will work with others, with the developer, as been said, to get the best possible zoning or rezoning that we can do. Thank you.
Ms. Heisen?
Thank you. The luxury of going last is I agree with most what everybody said. We do need to look at the zoning issues that are there and work with the owners of the property to see if we can rezone to create that mixed-use space, and include hopefully like an art space. We have so many creative people who live in Livonia who don't really have anywhere to showcase their abilities. And that would give us an opportunity, looking at 7 Mile and Livonia, to decide what kind of city do we want to be? What do we want to present to people? I agree, a green space would be fantastic, and thinking thoughtfully about how that space would be developed in conjunction with the neighborhoods there and with the retail space already there. We really have to look at it carefully. Another option would be, I know well, we'll find out later.
Stay tuned. All right, the next question, we'll start with Mr. King. And audience question, asking about the tax breaks for new developments such as Amazon, Masco, and A123 systems, and so on. Do you support continuing using tax abatements in Livonia? Why or why not? Again, about tax breaks for new developments that led to the development of Amazon, Masco, and A123 systems, and so on. Do you support continuing to use tax abatement programs in Livonia? Why or why not? Mr. King?
No, I do not. I've heard a couple of candidates up here say how great Amazon is. I happen to disagree. Amazon is putting retail out of business. Toys R Us went out of business because of Amazon. Sears is going out because of Amazon. Our brick and mortar people who are in our community, who live in our communities. The corporate giant Amazon comes in. Those jobs at Amazon, 75% will be non-Livonia residents. They'll be busing them in, driving them in, and as soon as they can automate those jobs are gone. They are not a good corporate citizen. I do not support giving tax dollars to people who are putting other businesses out of business. I'm not a fan of that. Amazon just got another $4.2 million from the state. I don't believe in giving millionaires money to build stadiums as well. Public money should fund public things. Yes.
Mr. Jolly?
So, on a personal note, the Amazon site gives me hope. When as a child, my father worked at the Livonia Spring and Bumper facility and lost his job when it closed down. So for me to sit up here when that site was redeveloped into something that shows the new economy in Amazon coming in, that gives me hope that things change and things revitalize. We had our budget meeting just a couple days ago here in the city of Livonia, and Amazon will be one of the top 15 highest taxpayers in the city of Livonia next year. So from that perspective, tax abatements or not, it's bringing in additional revenue to our community. Those are tax dollars we can use to engage our residents, to make developments, and to make this community better. And it's a lot better than a vacant site. Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
Tax breaks for companies, yes, I think that they should probably get that, but what I think, instead of getting the tax break up front, I think that we should wait like maybe 5 years to see how successful they're gonna be, and then maybe reward them with that tax break, rather than doing it the way that it has been done all this time. I mean, when you think about this, the residents don't get a tax break. That would be nice if you lived there for 10 years that you got a tax break. Wouldn't that be nice? Or up front, you say, well, I'm gonna live here for 10 years, we're gonna give you a tax break. But these companies come in, and are they successful all the time? No. Are they gone within 5 years sometimes? What is the life of some of these companies that just start up? So I don't think they should be rewarded up front all the time. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Meekin?
Well, if we didn't give the tax breaks, Wonderland Mall would be grass by now, Livonia Mall would be gone. The old DRC wouldn't be in existence. It's a necessary means of bringing new business to Livonia. The Spring and Bumper place is contaminated. They're building on contaminated land. So it's necessary to give them some breaks. Like my colleague mentioned, they are still paying taxes here. In the past 15 years, they were paying $10,000 a year. $10,000. We're gonna get upwards into 230,000 this year from Amazon. So it's worth it. It's bringing jobs to our city. Doesn't matter whether they're Livonia residents, they're gonna be shopping in our stores, eating in our restaurants. So it's good for business to give abatements to these companies.
Ms. White?
I also believe that tax abatements are warranted in certain circumstances. We really need to study the paperwork that comes before the council. With respect to the new jobs that are created by some of these companies and the economic development that follows that, these folks that work in these companies have to use hopefully we'll use our grocery stores, restaurants, our office service stores, and other types of amenities that we have in the city of Livonia and make those businesses successful. There are not many ways we can generate revenue as a fully developed or almost fully developed city. And as been pointed out, they are still adding to our tax base. So even though we give them an abatement, we're still better off in the long run. And as far as Amazon and putting the brick and mortar stores out of business, I think what it means, what Amazon and the changing retail shopping habits mean, is that stores have to get more creative. Many down in Detroit, and for example, Nordstrom is trying a new concept, not in this area, but in other states, where they don't have to keep all the inventory. They have enough things for people to try on clothing. You pick it out and then you order it online. It doesn't mean the end of brick and mortar stores as we know. It just, they need to evolve. Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
Well, thank you. It definitely is a new economy. And while I'm not a big Amazon shopper, it's here to stay. As you probably have read, seems like they've acquired Whole Foods, and perhaps the grocery market will have to take a look at what's going on there as well. So we have to be ready for that as a city, just like the state had to be ready to repurpose some of the economic toolbox we use for tax incentives or tax abatements. I know when I was on the council the last time, we started limiting the time that we gave. Instead of a full 12 years, we looked at 5, and we started individualizing a lot more of that business. Are they necessary? Yes. They are, because they're an incentive. And until every other city or township does not have that opportunity within this state or within these states regionally, then we have to offer that in order to be competitive and in order for business to grow and create jobs. Thank you.
Ms. Heisen?
Thank you. I agree tax abatements are necessary in order to draw new business for Amazon here in Livonia, but also the city of Detroit is looking to woo Amazon to create its second headquarters there, and Dan Gilbert and Mike Duggan are partnering to try to figure out how to get them there. So I think it's just part of getting these giant businesses where we need them. While they have a tax abatement, it's true, the people who work there will be spending money in Livonia and working within our established businesses to generate more income for our city. And I think it's important to look carefully when we offer these abatements, whether we're going to get a return on investment. So I think they have to be tailored to the business that we offer them to. Thank you.
And Mr. Hooper?
Absolutely not. When you look at Amazon would have came here regardless if we would have given them a tax break or not. They're already going into Romulus, they're going into northern Macomb County as well. That's their business model, is to try and get the best deal that they can. the location is what brought them here to Livonia. You got a east-west corridor on 96, you got north-south on 275. They would have come here regardless. I might go over my time on this question because I'm very passionate about this. I want you to think about, you parents out there and you grandparents out there, if you had a kid that was going into first grade this year, they're gonna be walking with cap and gown before this tax abatement expires. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm against doing this, whether it's for a stadium or whatever. I look at this is a way that people reward other people. If one side's gonna reward their favorite people, the other side's gonna reward their favorite. It's wrong. If you play you ever played the game of Monopoly, everybody has to go around that track. You've given a tax abatement to the people that own Boardwalk and Park Place, and they don't land on income tax as they go around. But you and I, we land on that spot every time. It's not right.
All right, we'll move into the next question now. We'll start with Mr. Jelly on this one. There's a lot of, in the opening comments, talking about millennials and attracting them to Livonia. And this question from the audience is, what specific ideas do you have to attract and keep millennials living in Livonia? Again, what specific ideas do you have to attract and keep millennials living in Livonia? Mr. Jolly.
Well, as the only millennial up here. So listen, retail will continue to change. Okay, the businesses will come and go through the city of Livonia. What we need to do is engage our residents. We need to make them proud of where they live. We need to make them lay down roots here. I hate to keep saying it, but the Livonia Seed Grant is a start of a way to do that, to get people to know their neighbors, to make friends, to make this a home. The people who moved here originally in the 60s and 70s, they're largely still here, and they're here for a reason. So we need to get back to that same concept of making this a strong community. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I want to try to do, to utilize the assets that we have, like Greenmead. Let's make that an exciting place. Let's fund it well so that it is an attractive destination for our residents and people in other communities as well. Let's utilize it for festivals and a place to go every single weekend. Let's have more things going on in the neighborhoods. That's the goal. Thank you.
Mr. Perez.
Repeat the question, please.
What specific ideas do you have to attract and keep millennials living in Livonia?
I think what we have to do is market Livonia, period. All the stuff that we have all the tools here right now. We have the recreation center, we have the libraries, we have the colleges, we have the low unemployment rate. All these things add up for these people to say, look, we're a thriving community. Come on in, come play with us. Thank you.
Mr. Meekin?
Well, the best thing we can do to attract millennials is build the senior facilities that I spoke about earlier. Because if we don't make houses available for the millennials to buy, they're never going to come here. We have to make sure there's housings available for them. We have the lowest tax rate around, so that's what they're going to want to see, and then affordable housing. That's what's going to attract millennials to Livonia. Thank you.
Ms. White?
I was jotting down notes. My first point was affordable homes. So that is very, very important. We have a great college community in the city of Livonia, but we need to provide or help provide jobs for those graduates. I have 3 millennials. One of them moved to Texas because that's where he got a job. And he will never come back to Michigan. I don't think. I would love it if he did, but I don't think he will. So jobs are key for these college graduates, and the more that we can provide for them within the city of Livonia and our business community, the better off we'll be, because presumably they'll want to live close to where they work. I live in Old Rosedale, and I'm seeing families where the young adults grew up in the neighborhood, they move out, and they come back at some future point when they're ready to raise their family, and they come back looking for homes in Old Rosedale. And I'm sure there's many other neighborhoods within the city of Livonia that are experiencing that as well. Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
I would echo that comment that Ms. White just made. In my neighborhood, they'll stick a note in your mailbox and say, you know, we grew up here, we want to come back and live here. But more than that, as was said, walkable communities. I think, Mr. West, you pulled the group together some years back where we focused on some of our younger people, if I'm not mistaken. And with our 7 to 8 different colleges here, we need to keep them here. We need to look at things like walkable areas. The rec center is a real jewel in our community. The parks we have, they start out in softball teams and our art programs and our education system we need to work with to accomplish that kind of thinking of think tank of where we want to be, what we want to do for these young people. They visit their grandparents here. It's a great community. Most of us have stayed here. Some of us have left here, has been said. But I really believe we have strong assets and we need to shine those more. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Heisen?
I think that we need to look at millennials as a group. In general, they are very forward-thinking. So we need to look at forward-thinking options, again, like free Wi-Fi. That helps draw millennials in. It also helps bring businesses in. Ride share with Zip cars. Most millennials have no interest in owning a car. The same thing with bike share and bike paths and creating more walkable spaces and more green spaces. Another issue is that millennials don't just have one job, they have multiple jobs. And so offering shared office space for creative people, for people who have multiple businesses, I think is important. Again, affordable housing and neighborhood events that would keep them engaged in the community. But I think the main thing is we need to ensure an open welcome for all people. Millennials are very, very accepting, by and large more accepting than any other age group, and we need to make sure that they know Livonia is open to diversity, whether it's your religion, your race, or your gender. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper?
Thank you. Again, the most important thing, one of the most important things would be the housing stock in the city. Creating spaces, 7 in Farmington, I mean, we've all talked about that. It's just not attractional. I think if you were a visitor to Livonia and you were driving past that, you would think, where am I at? Many of these strip malls have 1950s or 1960s written all over them. We need to get into the 21st century with the structures that we put up here. I realize Shostak owns that property, and we have to come alongside with him. He has to understand, he has to see what the value is for him in this. We're not gonna go and dictate, it is his property, but he has to see the value in it for him as well. So, thank you.
And Mr. King?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to touch on something from the last question. Google went to Ann Arbor, not for the tax abatement, because it was Ann Arbor. And that's what Livonia needs to be. Livonia has to be like Ann Arbor. I mean, that kind of notoriety that people want to come and live here. If you go home and Google, Troy aims to create walkable downtown amidst urban sprawl. That is what we are suffering from in many aged communities. New urbanism. Philosophy that focuses on walkable living spaces that include different types of housing in the same neighborhood in order to foster community and diversity. Millennials are moving to Midtown. Millennials are moving to Royal Oak and Ferndale because they have a vibrant central gathering place, which we can do in this city. You wonder why families don't move here? Go back to some of the answers of these questions. There's groupthink up here. There's very conservative think up here. Stop.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. I believe this might be the last question we will have time for before we get into closing comments. The city right now is in the process of developing a master plan. Process will try to take place over the next year. And I'm going to ask every candidate, what bold idea would you like to see be a part of that master plan? Again, this is the document of how the city gets developed going forward. What bold idea would you like to see as part of the city's new master plan? We'll start with Mr. Perez.
As I mentioned, the solar panel project, I'm in touch with the individual that started off the Madonna project right now. And if you think about it, we do have a lot of space that we can put solar panels. It's not only the solar panel, though, it's the hybrid cars too that we can do for all of these city vehicles and that. But when you think about all the space that we do have, all the rooftops, all the open land, and you talk about these strip malls that you want to tear down, yeah, you could put solar panels right there. So this, I think, is pretty bold. Maybe hopefully it's not too far out there. But my understanding is solar panels themselves run about, at least on a singular basis, about $300 or so a piece. So I think we could afford to at least experiment with that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Meekin?
Well, probably the most bold thing we could actually do is put mixed-use zoning into our ordinances. Right now, it's not there. It's a new thing that we have to adjust to. We've talked about mixed use at 7 in Farmington. That's a great idea. You know, we need something for the millennials to keep them active here. We have a little place in Livonia that's pretty hot for the millennials. It's 1 under. From 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock, it's a bunch of old folks. But come 11 o'clock, the millennials take over, then they go to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a great place for the millennials. We need more of that. We need more places that they can come and be called home. You know, right now we have 1. The old Kickers would be a perfect example of someplace on Plymouth Road that attracts the millennials. But it all takes back to our zoning ordinances. That's what has to be changed in the current master plan.
Okay. Ms. White?
I also think mixed use is what we need to encourage more in Livonia, but in doing so, we need to also think about not just mixed use, where you combine commercial, residential, maybe entertainment venues like a small cinema, but we also need to combine that with encouraging more green space and sidewalk requirements, so that if it is a mixed-use development, it really works in that way, that the residential component feeds off and complements the commercial portion and vice versa. Thank you.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you. As been stated, the mixed-use zoning, I can remember on our own dime, many of us went down to Ohio and looked at different niches that communities went and stepped forward out to see how they could be identified. And that's why I talked about where are we, who are we, what do we want to be in this community. It doesn't take a master plan always to do that, although I applaud the new master plan for whatever it is as they unveil it. But we need to really identify what groups are we serving. Maybe we need to hear from them. I believe strongly in partnerships. When you go into business, you see what your customers want. There's other things that I like in my store, but they don't always sell. So we want to give people what they will use, no matter what age they are, and what the demographics are. Bike paths, I strongly believe in as we move forward in open spaces, and has been talked about gathering spaces. Those would be excellent places in all areas of Livonia. Thank you.
Ms. Heisen?
I think one of the large issues we need to do is be part of the Paris Climate Accord. As a city, we can sign on as a signatory. As I said, GM, Ford, and Amazon have already said that they're going to continue working to create sustainability and decrease their carbon emissions, and we can work through a public and private partnership to implement that for the rest of our city. This means that we can add new technology, look at sustainability, and look to improve zoning to embrace new developments for a new cityscape. And it will help us preserve our natural resources. Nobody wants to be that city where you can't drink the water and you can't walk outside. And I think if we make this our focus and really put an effort into it, Livonia can be a jewel. Thank you.
Mr. Hooper?
So, the master plan and what could we do? I'm going to speak to the voters out there and the citizens of Livonia, the residents. The most important thing that can go into that master plan is your input. The city council and the candidates need to hear from you. What is important to you? What do you want to see? We can all come up with different things. Green spaces, gathering place. I love a lot of those ideas. I think they're great. But the most important thing is what is important to the residents. What is going to have value for the residents? And that needs to, your input has value We are your representatives or your hopeful representatives. We need to hear from you on what is important. That's the most important thing.
Mr. King?
Well, leadership demands that you have a vision and that you push your vision forward and you try to create that vision and bring people on board. And that central gathering place is very important. I agree with Gerald. The future is electric. So everything, the master plan, my question has been, and I've been asking it for years, why haven't we addressed the zoning? Why haven't we changed things to bring up things up to speed? We see what people are doing all over the country. What are we waiting for? Let's change the zoning, address the zoning, let's get going. I think everything that comes before council, every single item has to have a sustainability component and a technological component. They already do this in other cities. We have to change the culture of this city. If you want families to move in, if you want the city to move forward, we need to change the culture. We need to green this city. It's trillions of dollars of industry.
All right, and Mr. Jolly?
So you asked for a bold answer, right? As far as the master plan is concerned, everything needs to be on the table. We need to evaluate every corner of the city. But if you want something bold, you need something like the Livonia Promise. You need a program that is going to guarantee students in LPS will go to college for free. If we can accomplish that, and it's not a short-term goal, right? It's going to be a long-term goal. It's going to be hard work, and it may or may not ever happen. But if you can accomplish something like that, that changes the culture, that changes the dynamic, and that changes everything fundamentally about how we attract people to this community. I'm going to be here for 50 years, God willing, and that's something I'd like to see happen. Thank you.
All right, that'll be the last question we asked our candidates. We will now go into the closing comment or closing statement from each of the candidates. Each candidate has 90 seconds to present a closing statement, so we will begin with Mr. Meekin.
I'd like to thank the Livonia Chamber for hosting this evening's debate. The Chamber's done an incredible job of hosting events throughout the year that illustrate the quality of the business climate here in Livonia. Today's economic environment is a lot different than it was even 10 years ago. We need to adapt or get passed over, and I think we can do it. Good things are happening all over Livonia. Roads and sewers are being repaired. New businesses are opening. The Chamber's ambassadors are doing an outstanding job and very busy. They did 47 ribbon cuttings this year, to be exact. And luckily, I don't see that stopping anytime soon. On behalf of the community, we owe them a big thank you for all their hard work. Public safety is still a top priority in our city. From the body cameras we purchased to protect our officers and citizens, along with the new ambulances and the ladder truck. Our police and fire department will have the best equipment in the industry, as is required by our residents. Families first is Livonia's motto, so attracting new families, building strong schools, and keeping taxes low without skimping on services is key. I believe we are headed in the right direction. With the administration and all of our city workers working together, Livonia will continue to be a great place to live, work, and play. I ask for your support in the upcoming election, so make it Meekin on November 7th. Thank you.
All right, Ms. White with your closing statement.
I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to help residents get to know me a little better. Thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event, and thank you for all of you for attending. I hope it is clear that I have a deep understanding of city government. I also raised my family here, and my kids all graduated from Livonia Public Schools. I care deeply about what happens to our community and would like to see the city's history of good government continuing into the future. We have 1,400 acres of parkland and open space. Prior city leaders have been fiscally responsible, and we are not facing dire financial conditions like some other Michigan cities. I'm a firm believer in getting the basics right, supporting good schools, investing in public safety, and being sound fiscal managers. I'm dedicated to seeing our city thrive and will continue to be active in community endeavors, including the church mission work that I mentioned earlier. I would be grateful if the voters can place their trust in me once again and re-elect me to the City Council on November 7th. Thank you.
Ms. Toy.
Thank you, Chamber. Livonia is a great city. It is a top choice for both seniors and families. We have excellent city services and public safety, many recreation opportunities, highly rated schools, both K through 12 and higher education, and an active and a growing business community. However, we cannot rest on those laurels. In order for Livonia to continue to be a place where people work, live, learn, and raise families, we must be vigilant. We must consistently out-innovative and out-positive change in our community. I feel that with my depth of experience puts me in a unique position to help our city navigate some of our bright future. And I promise I will continue to be a strong advocate and a voice on the council for our Livonia residents and our business owners who call Livonia their home. Together we can secure that bright future for Livonia, one that is consistent with high quality of city services and amenities that our city has historically had to offer and that we have attracted so many to our community, call it their home, even in their golden years. I will be a fighter for our large senior population, of which I am one. I just discovered that. And also for young families and new residents. I am Laura Toy, a leader Livonia knows, a leader that knows Livonia. And I am asking you for your vote on Tuesday, November 7th, and on your absentee as well. Thank you very much.
Ms. Heisen?
Thank you all for coming out tonight, and thank you to the Chamber for inviting us. As I said, my husband and I moved to Livonia because we were looking for a good community to raise our child, and we found that in Livonia. We have flourished as a family, and I want to give back. And as we look to Livonia's future, I want to ensure that other families can find that environment and that businesses will come here and establish roots. I want to sustain our neighborhoods and improve our business environment. And I want to thoughtfully partner with businesses to make Livonia a place where they and our citizens will thrive. I look forward to working with the dedicated people on this, on the City Council, as well as with our citizens and our businesses to find solutions to any problems that arise. I know that by working together, despite our differences, we can move forward and make Livonia a place that families and businesses want to be. As a city, a state, and a country, we face a lot of challenges. These challenges can sometimes seem insurmountable, but by working together and by bringing our best thoughts and ideas, we can solve any problem we encounter. Livonia is a great city made up of caring neighborhoods. People are helpful, and they want the best for themselves and their families. It's a great business environment. Businesses open themselves up to help in any way they can for any kind of event. And I want to help continue that. My background and my volunteer work will benefit the City Council, and I hope you'll vote for me on November 2nd. Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Hooper?
Again, I'd like to say, extend thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on, and for all of the candidates, and for all of the voters, all you folks that came out here and spend your time researching the candidates that are before you. You have a decision to make, and that's why you should vote for who you should, who do you like? I'll say this: I'm not the status quo candidate. I believe that I can bring a fresh perspective to the City Council if I am elected, and I believe that I'll be an agent for change for the better. The number one issue that I see is getting new folks into Livonia, new families. That's going to help the schools, it's going to help the businesses, it's just going to help the community, the neighborhoods, all the way around. In the past, Livonia has relied on its location and great city services and being a quiet bedroom community, and that model worked well, but it's now the 21st century. And in many ways, our community has fallen behind. And that's not to say that the best days are behind us, because I truly believe that we have a very bright future ahead of us if we take advantage of some very creative opportunities and we do it in a quick manner. I believe that the community needs to sell itself better, to reach out to families so that they know and understand what makes us unique and special. Our parks, our history, our great school, low taxes, and exceptional residents. I'm hoping that you would look at me and see a candidate that has integrity, and I would appreciate your vote on November 7th. Thank you all.
Okay. And Mr. King?
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. It's nice to see more than 5 people out here. Listen, learn, and lead has been my mantra as an elected official. I was the lone school board member that challenged $30,000 shipping charge. I was the only one. It was status quo before I asked that question. I was shocked that we would pay $30,000 shipping for textbooks. That ended up saving the district $28,000 in shipping and changing a policy. Status quo is death. You have to move forward. Status quo is going backwards. There's so many things I wanted to talk about. These forums, you're very restricted in time. We need to repurpose old structures before we build new ones. I see all this new building going on. Perfect example, the Farmers Insurance Building on 5 Mile next to RG and GR Harris. That was a wreck. He came in there. It's beautiful. It's one of the nicest buildings. Instead, we let all these empty buildings go begging while we put up new structures. So that's something. The other thing is a central gathering place. I play Shane Park in Birmingham, Sibley Square in Wixom, Kellogg Park in Plymouth, Heritage Park in Farmington, Milford Amphitheater, Brighton's building a new thing. All of these other cities can do this, but Livonia is unable to do this. I disagree. Please do your research. Check me out. It's not groupthink with me. I'm an outsider. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jolly?
Well, I'd like to thank not only the chamber, but the people in the audience here. I look into the audience and I see the faces of people who've contributed a lot to our community over the years. Livonia is a great community. It has a strong foundation, excellent public services, public safety, schools. We've done everything well, but the bar is raising, and I believe we can rise to the challenge. I want to utilize the great foundation that we have here in the city of Livonia by engaging with each other, partnering with each other, with neighborhoods, with the business community, to become the engaging community that we all want. It's not necessarily about building new structures or identifying a singular space. It's about coming together as a community and showing up at the same place and making something what you want it to be. There's a lot to be said and a lot of things that we can do. I think I've shown over the course of the last 2 years and the 8 years before that, that I not only come up with creative solutions, but I follow through and I accomplish them. I would like to keep doing that for the city of Livonia. You have 4 votes for city council. I hope that after listening to this and witnessing the last 2 years of service on council, that you will find me worthy of one of those votes. I would like to continue my service and work for you and make this the community we want it to be. Thank you.
And Mr. Perez?
I'd like to start off by saying, Laura, welcome to my senior Livonia club.
Thank you.
There's approximately 32,000 of us.
Yes, sir.
Out of what, 90,000 plus. I would like to thank the Livonia Democratic Club and the Livonia Police Officers Association for their endorsements. As I mentioned in my opening statement about my experiences helping me to qualify for the city council position, my nearly 30 years of corporate experience will allow me to meet with business opportunities that will present itself to the city of Livonia so we may continue to grow economically. My 23 years of employment as a child care provider has allowed me to meet with many citizens beginning their families. We have touched many lives in this city, and I hope to continue this relationship. My 23 years of employment as a Livonia Police Reserve Officer has allowed me to see your families enjoy all the special events that the city has to offer. My work at Madonna University has allowed me to become involved with the Livonia young adults and the international citizens of the world. In our neighborhood right now is a microcosm of the city. I look out my front window and I see a new house being built. I see an abandoned house that the city has purchased and is going to demolish or renovate. I see another house that is going to expand their garage and witness the process of the splitting of a lot. It is the activities like this, past and present, that has allowed me to go to City Hall to experience the appeals the citizens were presenting to the city officials. I find this fascinating to become involved in the interactions of citizens and government. I believe these experiences will help me to be an excellent city council member. It would be an honor to serve as a city council member. Please visit my Facebook page and vote for Gerald Perez on November 7th. Thank you.
All right, let's please take a moment to acknowledge our candidates for their time and willingness to serve our community. I just had one quick thing. The Chamber of Commerce wants to thank each of the candidates and everyone in the audience for joining us this evening. Also wishes to thank Livonia Television for its efforts to record and rebroadcast this forum in the weeks ahead. Replays of this forum can be seen for cable television subscribers on Cable Access Channel 8 in the next several weeks. We would like to acknowledge the efforts of the Livonia Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee for supporting this candidate forum. To our television viewers, we applaud you for taking time to learn more about the candidates who aim to lead Livonia into the future. More importantly, it is important that we all encourage all to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. If you cannot vote on that day, please contact the Livonia City Clerk's office for information on obtaining an absentee ballot. That concludes our program. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.